when POS really rolled out in the 90s, it unleashed new metrics. We start talking about market basket data. We start talking about our share of sales, whereas before we just knew what we shipped out of the home office or out of the DC. We hope it made it to the store, but POS, it unleashed all these new metrics and ways to drive the business. So what are those metrics going to be that when we lift up that black box at scale, the metrics that are actually going on at the shelf that help us drive our business?
Welcome to the latest edition of Conversations on Retail, the Storesight podcast. I'm Henry Ho, and joining me is Marc Yount, President and COO of Storesight. We're excited to discuss how CPG brands can win at retail by sharpening their display execution. Here's the flow of the podcast today. Hey, Marc, I'd like for you to share a little bit about who we are and what we do. We'll talk through some examples of display and display compliance stories. There's a lot of them in retail. And then we'll end by talking about what the future holds.
Sounds great. Thanks, Henry. For anyone who might be new or not know about us, at Storesight, we like to say that we are lifting the black box off of the retail store and to show our customers in the industry what's actually going on inside the store at the shelf at scale. It's a big venture. We call it the third revolution of retail data. We know there's a lot of great POS data out there. We know there's shipment data out there, but most people haven't solved for getting great data from what's actually going on at the store to understand their execution. We do that at a large scale across multiple countries. In the US alone, we regularly are checking over 50,000 retail locations. We do that through a crowd of shoppers, connected shoppers that we call field agents, who use our app to gather information while they're out in the field, take pictures, submit that data, and then we're able to layer our AI on top of that to extract even more data off those photos, roll it all up together for our customers in multiple ways that we'll talk about here in a little bit.
That's great, Marc. You know, you and I just came back from Chicago. We were up there early in the week. We were at the Path to Purchase conference where a lot of marketers were there talking about their business. We actually gave a talk on the future of retail intelligence, and we said, the future is here. So we're going to get into that a little bit today. There certainly was a lot of talk about the importance of displays. Give us a little bit of perspective on what you heard.
Yeah, more than I expected, and actually timely. We knew we'd be recording this podcast, but we didn't know we'd be getting so much fodder from the industry. Up there with a lot of brands, a lot of solution providers, and one of the common themes was about, especially where we're at right now in a key season of retail, how are displays being executed? People hearing our talk about unveiling that black box and going, we know you can see planograms, we know you can check on pricing and out of stocks, but can you check on displays? Of course, the answer is an easy yes, and the key question back is why. And what we hear from customers and prospective customers is that it's so critical that every one of their displays is executed per plan. They built their guidance off of it, they built their planning off of it, and it drives so much of their business. We'll talk about some stats in a minute that really back that up, but we certainly heard that display understanding and display execution is critical, maybe more than it has been in a long time.
For sure. So today we're going to zero in on display compliance, one of the most impactful and challenging areas for in-store success. At retail, we said, hey, it's always been about execution. And for the span of my career, it hasn't really changed. There's some new tools here today that help people watching this podcast on getting their arms around this. To put it in perspective, on average, 24% of CPG sales are driven by products featured on temporary promotional displays, such as end caps and freestanding racks. For seasonal brands, this can be much higher. In fact, categories like suntan lotion, if you miss your goals on display compliance in the early part of the year, right, it may mean that you never make up through the balance of the year. So if you miss that key window of display in the early part of the season, you're shot.
Well, Henry, you keep saying season.
Yep.
As we record this today on November the 14th, it tis the season.
Oh, yes, it is. Oh.
Thanks, Henry.
Right.
It's the season. It's the season that people that, especially in certain categories, this is where they make hay while the sun shines. So
Absolutely.
the season's huge. If you look into the archives of some of the Storesight materials, you'll see a webinar that was done with one of our partners, Menasha Packaging, talking specifically about the criticality of seasonal displays, the creativity, ones that work and ones that don't. I also think about, we work with a lot of customers. One of them that we're really close to and that relies on us a lot for displays during the season is a major tape and adhesives company. And guess what? Those packages need to be taped, and that tape matters. And guess where those customers get that tape?
In store, in the display.
When they walk by the display
yeah.
and they realize, I need some of that tape because I've got some wrapping coming.
Got to be able to see it.
If it's not there, the odds of them going into the department that houses it in line are pretty low.
Yeah.
And if their competition got the space, that's even worse.
Yeah.
Displays are critical during this time of season.
But here's the catch. But only 58% of planned secondary displays are executed as intended.
That's the stat that stood out to me when you said it. You got to pause there for a second and go, are we just okay with 58% nowadays? Have we just gotten used to it? Do people even know that that's a reality? I'm betting a lot of people listening to this that deal with execution issues, that's actually not a surprising stat, which is kind of sad. It's more nuanced than that, Henry. It's not just 58%. Let me read you some more stats. So the channel matters. Here's an example. Grocery stores see about 57% compliance. They're right there in that middle we just talked about. And from those displays, the brands that display see an average of about 19% sales lift.
Yeah.
Okay, that goes along with our general stats. Well, let's talk about mass merchants. In mass channels, only about 40% compliance. 40. Bigger box, a lot more space to get wrong or right. And more times than not, it's gotten wrong versus the plan. But you know what? It matters so much more in mass because of foot traffic. Just from those 40% compliance, brands see on average a 32% sales lift. So 32%. Imagine if it was 80% compliance. I assume we'd be at 64% sales lift. It'll make or break their year. You go into smaller channels like Dollar, there's 78% compliance with just a 9% sales lift. So the channel matters.
Those numbers are startling. 58%, right, on average.
It makes me think I used to sell into a seasonal category as well.
Yeah.
I used to sell to Walmart in the lawn and garden category way back in the day. And guess what? The 1 or 2 end caps we could get during those critical 3 months usually made up about 20% of our total sales for that channel and that customer.
That number lines up beautifully with the data that we have. It says many brands allocate up to 20% of their gross annual revenues for promotional activities.
Yeah, and they're only getting 58%.
58%, yes. And much of that goes towards securing and executing secondary displays, right? So end cap displays tend to deliver the highest compliance and sales lifts, making them a favorite execution format for CPGs. So it's never been more important. And so let's talk about some of the tools that are out there. We've got some tools that we've developed. Let's talk a little bit about Storesight and what we bring in the area of display.
Well, let me tell you maybe a recent story of a program we developed in one of those other channels, C-Store.
Yeah.
So I think through this story, you'll get an idea of the way people can engage with what we do to solve this problem. And there's multiple ways. So if we just think about basic seasonal, if we think about channels, C-Store matters for a lot of companies, especially salty snack, confectionery, beverage. And the story here is about a beverage company that we work very closely with. In their C-Store, certain cooler displays make or break their business, and they have almost zero visibility to execution of those displays. So we've partnered with them to develop an ongoing way to go and gather across a major convenience store like 7-Eleven, which has over 12,000 locations, by the way, in very rural areas sometimes, to go gather a normal and regular view and consistent view of what's actually going on with their cooler displays at 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
And they're able to then use that information to go back and make decisions about how they can partner better with a retailer like 7-Eleven to ensure compliance, therefore meet their sales, make their bonus, and all the good things that come from that.
Yeah, C-stores is just one important channel for that category. The club channel is another area where it's really important to get it right. People make major investments to get into club. And one of the largest retailers in that channel doesn't share any data. So for most people, they operate blind.
Yeah.
And again, more important for people to understand what is going on. You buy those fence displays, you buy those end aisle displays, and it's critically important to know because so much of your year or so much of your annual volume or your channel volume is in those what I call dark spots in the industry.
Well, and those examples actually lead really well into what your question was to me, which is what does Storesight do about it?
Yeah.
I talked about who we were, I talked about how it operates. So we have a crowd from 15 years ago. We developed through a company called Field Agent and have just continued to grow this crowdsourcing data collection engine that goes and gathers all of this. So to your question, how do we address it? Well, customers come to us in some ways and say, I've got these displays that should be out, or I've got a display calendar I want to put in front of you. We've got to be checking on what's going on at these channels at these times across these states or regions. And we just configure it, launch it out to the crowd, and in days and weeks and mostly days, we gather very fast at scale data, photos, proof about whether it is or isn't going on. Are you getting the compliance you expected? And our customers are able to ingest that data and go do something about it.
That just triggered a thought from when I first started my career a while ago. Back in the day, it was, hey, if you could just find out what happened to a display program and you would get data maybe 3, 4, 5 weeks later after the event, that was the standard. Today, there are tools that can just give you insights within days on what's going on. And I think the folks out there listening to this podcast, you have the ability now to start understanding what is going on with your execution from the moment it's supposed to be in store on the floor.
Yeah. Henry, I would actually say, first of all, if you're someone who just heard that said, I still rely on 4 or 5 week old data to understand display execution, you need to pause this podcast and go do something about it. Of course, we hope it's at storesight.com, but do something about it.
Yeah.
The tools to be able to solve for quick at scale insights, they're here. They have been. We pioneered this, and other companies have options as well. And if you're relying on old stale data to try to say, well, you could have done if the display would have been executed, then you're missing the opportunity and you're just reporting historically. We talked about Field Agent, and we talked about how Field Agent plus a company called Shelfgram that we acquired recently has created Storesight, the company we have today. And Shelfgram basically is the AI processing and visual layer on top of all of the photos being taken out in the field. And it really just provides this always-on view of what's going on across retail. One of the specific modules inside Storesight is the display module. Yeah. And it's a distinct way that the AI parses out things that are displays, end caps, side wings, four ways, anything that might qualify as a display. It puts them in a separate bucket. So someone who really cares about display execution can look at what was happening that week, that day. I've been sitting here scrolling while we're talking, Henry.
Yeah, what do you see, Mark?
I don't know. I'm looking at, I went back a little ways into Halloween, and I'm looking at a Kroger in Indiana, and a big end cap of, again, Halloween, Tyson Spooky Chicken Nuggets.
Chicken nuggets.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that Tyson cared a whole lot about whether or not that cooler end cap was full of spooky Tyson chicken nuggets. And the tool allows someone to go in. I literally saw one of those. I went ahead and clicked on the text search, put in spooky chicken nuggets, and it pulled up 100 other locations from that week where we had captured that same end cap for someone to see what their data was.
You know, Halloween has gotten to be such a big holiday. It's not a holiday, but it's such a big theme across our country. And so there's a lot of energy and a lot of money being spent on thematic displays. So you have to win there.
And I think you have to be able to see it, because even if I'm not Tyson in that case with that brand, I'm probably someone who plays in that space who, if I can have this always on view of not just the store down the street or the one that my boss sent me that was executed wrong, or the one I argued with my buyer about off of a replenishment report, if I have an always on view where I can go in, and what Storesight's great at is allowing customers to sit down in the morning, sip their first cup of coffee, and go walk 100 stores virtually from their laptop to see what displays popped up, what's new, what's different.
You know, this year, the cutover from Halloween to holidays, right, for the majority of the categories happened over the weekend. And, you know, Halloween was October 31st, and November 1st was a Saturday. It was a new week. We're going into the new week. And holiday has never been more important for gift set. People with gift sets, this is another example of seasonality, right? I can remember a time where a major customer had a major gift set promotion going on, and they realized that it was the day before Thanksgiving holiday. I got the call, and I looked at it, and I said, somebody's in trouble. And for about 2 seconds, I was trying to decide whether to take the call, but I took the call. And this customer says, I'm in trouble. I need to know what the execution of my gift pack is like at this particular retailer. And got all the info. And in the middle of the night, I got a hold of somebody on our team, and we go and pull that audit off for him. And he was able to get timely enough data over a 2-day period to save that execution. This is just another example of how real-time information can help you stave off a disaster.
Yeah, so we talked about how Storesight can save you in a pinch with the power of the crowd and a project or a bespoke program. We talked about how it can be an always-on platform if you just subscribe to it. But you mentioned we were going to talk about the future, Henry.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
You know, as we think about the future of display compliance and this whole idea of always on retail intelligence, tell the audience what we're working on. Some really fun and cool stuff.
Yeah, I think if we're really going to bring in a third revolution of retail intelligence, if we're really going to lift up that black box, it actually has got to be a little bit more than everything we just talked about. I think those are revolutionary. We're obviously growing as a company because we can, at that speed and scale and size and have an always on view, people love the tool. But what has to come are new metrics. If you remember when POS really rolled out in the 90s, it unleashed new metrics. We start talking about market basket data. We start talking about our share of sales, whereas before we just knew what we shipped out of the home office or out of the DC. We hope it made it to the store, but POS, it unleashed all these new metrics and ways to drive the business. So what are those metrics going to be that when we lift up that black box at scale, the metrics that are actually going on at the shelf that help us drive our business?
Well, I know we're working on some really fun things around the share of shelf. Tell us about that.
That's a perfect one. If we're going to revolutionize this space, we think that's the biggest one to start with, share of shelf. And what we mean by that is more of a real dynamic share of shelf. If we're looking at all these stores all the time and aggregating those and putting them through AI to extract data off those, we can extract number of facings by brand, size and space by brand, how out of stock the shelf was. So you can take that in consideration. And all of a sudden, what used to be this time-honored tradition of just maybe comparing your share of sales with what the planogram was supposed to be, if you even had access to the planograms.
That's right.
Or maybe comparing it to a few store walks that you did. I know
of customers that go to their local store they'll spend maybe a couple hours in front of the shelf, and they actually capture every item on the shelf to calculate that one store share of shelf.
The innovative customers do even better.
They maybe do 2 stores.
They may even send out a field force to go do 5 or 10.
Yeah.
And across 500 different planogram sets, and they'll get the most relevant ones. And probably as a statistic, it works okay compared to share. But think about it for a second. When now all of a sudden you've got millions of photos that have come in that week across those categories that matter to you most, and now all of a sudden they're being processed through AI to tell us all of this. Why can't we just let you sort, filter, look at the regions, the stores, the store set, the types, the categories that you want to, click a button and get a real-time aggregated view of share of shelf? Refilter, do it again. Let it show you what the percentage is for this brand versus this brand on that set of planograms that you filtered down to, or across an entire retailer. And now picture going into a buyer meeting and saying, look, this is an objective data set, not something we mined, that says we have 20% share of sales from our Circana or Nielsen report over here, but we've only got 15% of the space.
Yeah.
We need some more space. We need
That's
some
a
points
common
of
problem, by the way. Big brands are underspaced, and they need ways to be able to prove that to the retailer.
So that's one, but what does that have to do with displays, Henry? Because we're talking about displays. And
Boy, I tell you what, we said displays are important, right? And so I know we actually have some customers that we are also calculating and helping them figure out their share of displays. Really interesting work.
I think it's huge. I actually think it's going to be one of our biggest unlocks to see the customers we're working with to do this, see the questions that are being asked. I would be willing to bet most people listening to this, especially if you're a brand or supplier or somebody in the CPG world, does not have a good aggregate view of what brands are on display, what types of display are actually happening at the shelf. And maybe you have a big aggregate statistic of what percent of a certain brand is on display based upon a small sample. But at scale and aggregate, to know how much of it was end cap, how much of it was sidekick, how much of it was a clip strip, and how much of that per brand, was it your brand or not? And the photos to back it up at scale. We think that's really big, and it's really introducing a new metric called share of display.
Yeah.
And share of display at scale and in a dynamic way, like I just talked about with share of the planogram or the modular, the share of display is a way for you to see exactly what's going on with you or your competition in a matter of what's going on across the store. So that's one key metric that we're unlocking as we speak.
So share of shelf.
Yep.
Share of display.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also working on some really fun things around display compliance measurements in a bigger sense through our Storesight program.
Yeah, I mean, you actually led this intro, I think, with talking about display compliance, because we're measuring execution. But it's one thing to do the examples we gave where somebody's got a pre-Thanksgiving problem,
that's right,
or a season coming up that's huge, and got to call my guys at Storesight and get something done over there. It's another thing to plan out this idea of understanding that I regularly expect these displays to be up in certain departments and certain retailers, and then have a trending dashboard over time that week over week, month over month, at scale, again, photo backed up across all the key channels you care about and the locations you care about. Am I compliant? I paid for this. I was told I was going to get it. And now I'm trending it over time, so I have a great ongoing story with my retailer partner about what our display compliance looks like.
Yeah, some of our most innovative customers that are partnering with us, it's coming from the top. The CEO is saying, hey, I know that this is one of the biggest investments I can make by fixing display compliance, or making sure that my retail execution team is constantly driving compliance. And then on the other side, we're seeing senior sales and senior C-suite leaders are saying, if I understand what the share of shelf is, I can either reward or challenge my sales team to do better in these areas. I need to have an objective KPI and dashboard to understand these things. We're all over that.
It's going to change the way people work Just like the revolution of shipment data or the revolution of POS data did, these metrics will change the way people work, the decisions they make, and grabbing that extra 1 or 2 points of share along the way.
So, Mark, to wrap this thing up, the future of retail intelligence, it's here. It's now. We're excited by the work that we've done. And so if today's discussion has resonated with you in the audience, and you'd like to learn more about our AI-powered platform and custom audit capabilities, please reach out to us via Storesight.com.
Yeah, we'd love that. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to the Storesight Display Compliance Podcast. We hope to hear from you so that we can help optimize your display performance. See you next month for more strategies to help your brands win at retail.
This is Storesight. Let's go.
Let's go.